Well, well, well. For the third time in 4 years, and the fourth time ever, the Miami Heat and Boston Celtics are the last teams standing in the Eastern Conference. The Heat or Celtics have represented the East in 9 of the last 17 NBA Finals. In that span, they have 4 NBA titles between them. The Celtics will play in their 8th conference finals since 2008, and the Heat will play in their 9th since 2005. Want to take a guess at who has the most playoff wins in the NBA since the 2019-20 season? The Miami Heat have 33, and the Boston Celtics have 33. Since Jimmy Butler arrived in Miami, since Bam Adebayo became a full-time starter, and since Jason Tatum and Jalen Brown have come into their own, this has been the best rivalry in the NBA. This is the 6th playoff matchup between the Heat and Celtics ever. The Heat are 3-2, and their most recent win coming in the 2020 bubble. That series truly began with Bam's game-saving block on Tatum in overtime of Game 1. Adebayo would have won Eastern Conference Finals MVP that year if that were a thing. He averaged 22, 11, and 5 in the series and shot 61% from the field. In 2022, it wasn't pretty, but the Celtics answered. They withstood a 41-point Butler Game 1, a 31-point Bam Game 3, and a 47-point Butler Game 6, blowing a 3-2 lead at home to hang on despite a furious Heat run to end Game 7. And of course, the shot. Tatum was inaugural Eastern Conference Finals MVP, averaging 25, 8, and 5 in the series. It's the most storied franchise in NBA history against the most accomplished one east of Golden State over the last 20 years. Heat Celtics, best 4 out of 7, best 2 out of 3. I'm Brian Fonseca, and welcome back to the Eastern Conference Finals.
We're on a mute war with me and Alejandro. Let's freaking go. We're back in the Eastern Conference Finals. Miami Heat, Boston Celtics, Game 1. We are live. We are live here for the Miami Heat pregame show here on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. I'm your host, Jonathan, aka 3-Piece Combo. We got Gad, Alejandro running the 1 and 2s. Marco might be joining us too. There's Alejandro. Guys, we're back here in we're back in the Eastern Conference Finals. How could you not be hyped after that video? Shout out to our guy, Brian Fonesca, for that. Appreciate you doing that beautiful voiceover and narration over that Miami Heat. Guys, 3 times in 4 years, we have to, as we welcome in Marco, we have to also, before we even just acknowledge the game, just acknowledge what the Heat has done as a team since Jimmy Butler has come here to Miami. This isn't something that we should take for granted as Heat fans. This is something that, being the last 4 remaining teams for 3 out of the last 4 years, is something that's very, very rare for other teams to do. Teams dream, Philadelphia, New York, to make the Eastern Conference Finals, and we're doing it essentially in our sleep in our worst season in the last couple years. But guys, enough of me. We got Gad, we got Marco. Before we get into the actual game 1s and 2s, we want to thank our primary sponsor here, which is our guy, Mark Brown, PA. He's a Heat fan. Make sure you give your business to Heat fans, not any Celtics fan, Knicks fans, 76ers fan. This is the guy who take care of you with all your financial asset planning, and a real estate lawyer as well. So go to markbrownpa.com, give him a call, 954-866-8513. He'll do a free consultation, and he does, like I said, he'll do estate planning. He does real estate lawyers, so if you have to take care of any foreclosures or any closing fees, he'll make sure to take care of that. And if you have no idea what I'm talking about, you got CC Gad up at the top there peeping through. He does bankruptcy as well. So make sure you guys hit up our guy, markbrownpa.com. Like I said, he's a Heat fan. Make sure you hit up our Heat fans and not anybody else. Of course, we got our prize picks, but we'll get to that in a little bit later, which using that promo code 5, you'll match your initial deposit and get up to $100 free, 20 free plays. But guys, Eastern Conference Finals, Miami Heat versus Boston Celtics. It seems like this is just normal at this point. Like, this is what the Eastern Conference Finals has been for 3 of the last 4 years. And then even going into the Big 3 era, our battles with Boston then, and pre-Big 3, the battles D-Wade had with the Big 3 of Boston then too. So this is a familiar foe going way back, many eras ago. But let's get to tonight, guys. Marco, I'll start with you, my man. Going into tonight's game, obviously Boston poses a unique threat when it comes to Jason Tatum. He's been able to have hit or miss games throughout the playoffs. Boston hasn't really shown the skill set that they have as far as the talent putting that all together on the court quite yet, because they have a great collection of players, including, like we said, obviously you got Jason Tatum and Jalen Brown, but Al Horford, an experienced big man in the playoffs, is something that is very, very necessary, especially come late games. So that's why I think Kevin Love will play a big factor into this. But looking at the Boston Celtics team, what is the biggest factor or the biggest concern coming into this playoff series?
Uh, for me, ever since the first matchup they had against Boston in the regular season, it's been the point of attack, and Miami kind of closing out on all their ball handlers, because everybody on that team can pretty much, they can disrupt the offense for Miami on the defensive end, and then offensively they can just make Miami move, which is something that a lot of teams have a hard time with, but with Miami especially, because they don't have a lot of good wing defenders outside of Jimmy and Caleb. So it's going to be very much heavily relied upon those two and Bam to kind of clean up the back end of that. Boston is very good at making you work. They're very good at making you, move with the ball, because they move the ball really well. But again, there's other times where they just get into ISO ball and it's just really nasty basketball. That's what Miami did last year in the playoffs. They kind of forced Boston into this one-on-one stuff. Turnovers, which was a big key thing. Boston's biggest enemy is themselves, and it's been like that for the past 2 years, honestly. Miami can really force them to play their game, which is how last year, when you look at the shooting numbers for Miami, the only reason that series went 7 was because of A, Jimmy, B, Bam also, putting in his worth, and C, because Miami played really great defense throughout the series. So honestly, I think defensively, Miami has to really focus on that point of attack, making sure that Boston doesn't bend their defense too much and kind of force them to play their game.
Marco coming in heat shape, looking off, showing them shoulders off here on the pregame show. Got between the Atlanta Hawks and between the 76ers, the Boston Celtics got 5 losses taken from them so far. What are some things from those losses or some of those themes that you think Miami can use to capitalize and get some victories in this series?
So I think what we've learned from the Heat, especially in a playoff sense, because I think they've been very different from the regular season team, is they don't really play bad games, right? Like they lost against Milwaukee with no Giannis. Yes, the energy was a little piss poor that game, but it also was because they were getting barraged from 3. I mean, when a team hits 22 threes or whatever against you, you're probably going to lack a little bit of effort. And Boston does have the capability of hitting that type of volume from 3 on some good efficiency. But Miami doesn't have bad games. And Boston, 5 losses to objectively less talented teams, they don't take every single game seriously. Like, I think coming into tonight, this really feels like the type of game that the Heat can steal, which is weird because Spo is typically not a game 1 coach. They typically will adjust and kind of get better and learn how to play against the team throughout the series. And the Heat are, objectively speaking, undermanned in this series as well. Boston has way more talent, at least from guys 3 through 15 on the roster. But Boston doesn't really take every single moment of every single game seriously, and I think the Heat do. They might have some lineups that don't, but I think the Heat do, and I think that is the type of advantage where they can kind of make a statement a little bit like, hey, you might be better, but we are going to come and play every single game, and that's really big for the Heat. I think they can really find a way to those bad quarters that Boston has, those bad runs, those 6-minute stretches, whatever it may be, where Marcus Smart says, it's Marcus Smart time, I'm going to start hooping. And he ends up shooting them out of a little bit of a lead or whatever it may be. Those types of things are what I think the Heat can use to their advantage and really use to turn this series. Because on paper, it should be Boston that wins this series. But as we've seen this year, on paper doesn't mean shit when you're playing against the Miami Heat. Because quite literally, forget everything you know. And just watch what Jimmy Butler and Eric Spoelstra and the rest of the guys can do. So I'm excited. I don't want to say I'm confident, but I'm excited because I think the Heat, there are some things that they can exploit with this Boston team.
So, perfect transition. You talked about Spo. Ben talked about only thing trusting less than Missoula is Gad's hairline. But let's talk about that coaching discrepancy, Marco, because obviously Coach Spo in the league, obviously, it's head and shoulders. He's pretty much the only guy in the league with a safe job. at this point. Everybody else seems expendable to whichever their team, maybe outside of Steve Kerr, extendable to whatever team they're on right now. But Mark, Coach Spoelstra has been doing an absolute masterclass throughout the playoffs, especially maybe let's say, in the Knicks series, those couple of lineups where, the bench lineups played really well. And then when they didn't play really well, what did he do game 6? He adjusted and he did, he made the adjustment in that second quarter to make sure that Miami didn't go down in that little spurt where the bench went through. So what are some things you expect Coach Spo to do? Or how does Coach Spo give us an advantage in this series? And like what Agad said, in a series where we're less talented from 3 to 17 or 3 to 15.
I think this series might be the one that Eric goes back to the zone like he did against Milwaukee. I think he's going to try to force Boston to, out of their comfort zone like he did in that 2020 series where he used the zone a lot. That was also because, Gordon was starting and Duncan was getting a lot of minutes. So it was a matter of, you had to hide some of those guys. But I think this series might be a good, good game for or a good series for Spoelstra to kind of go back into that bag of tricks and kind of throw Boston off. They haven't really seen a zone like theirs. I mean, Philadelphia played some in zone in the last round, but Philadelphia's zone is not the same as Miami's. Tim Legler talked about it on JJ Redick's podcast, I think, about how Miami's zone is different because they play it, as efficiently as any other team they've ever seen play zone because they are always connected. They always communicate. It's not, you can't be a team out there just throwing a zone willy-nilly because Miami practices that kind of stuff probably every single practice they have. It's kind of lodged into their brains at this point. But other than that, last year the coaching really didn't matter because, Ime Udoka was just a rookie head coach last year. It's all about the players, but, you take any advantage you can get, especially with Eric Spoelstra being number one in my mind. It's not even close at this point. So I think he's going to have a lot of bags or a lot of tricks up his sleeve. So hopefully, he kind of – I feel like a lot of Haywood Highsmith's going to be involved. So watch out for that. I'm not the biggest Haywood fan, but he's won me over a little bit.
You actually stole the words out of my mouth because that's what I was thinking as well. He presents, obviously Jalen Brunson being as shifty as he is, that's not the best matchup for Haywood Highsmith. And we saw him get cooked by him multiple times in last series, get the foul drawn. But when you have a guy like Jason Tatum and a guy like Jaylen Brown, you can put somebody like Haywood Highsmith, who's, maybe not the most experienced guy, but can fill in some of those minutes defensively, as well as a Caleb Martin. And then when come close to the stretch, you have your Bam Adebayos and you have your Jimmy Butlers thrown on them when it comes to crunch time. But God, before we get into our prize picks, I want to talk about what do you think is the biggest X factor coming into tonight's series, maybe outside of Jimmy's ankle's health, the biggest X factor coming into this, or not tonight, but the series overall?
It really feels like a cop-out to say three-point shooting, although I really, truly do believe that the Heat's three-point shooting is a massive swing factor for this series, just based upon the way that they've been playing and the way that the offense looks way cleaner when they hit shots. But I'm going to go with one specific player, and I'm going to go with Kyle Lowry. I think last year, what we didn't see from Kyle Lowry ended up being the difference in the series, honestly. We didn't see someone who was in control, who's playing at their own pace, who felt comfortable, who was taking the pull-up jumpers when they were available. There were moments where he did do that. But I think Lowry being comfortable and playing at the level he's been playing at in these playoffs could be a huge swing factor. Because Malcolm Brogdon is sixth man of the year, but if Kyle Lowry can win those kind of lead guard minutes off of the bench, that swings this series, in my opinion, because he desperately needs to elevate that bench group, whereas Boston, they kind of have the talent thing figured out, right? And it's just a matter of Malcolm Brogdon kind of running the show a little bit when their guys are on the bench and when they're running those unique lineups. I think Kyle Lowry needs to be someone who is going to elevate an entire bench unit and also be a closer in this series. And if he's able to do that, I think the Heat's chances skyrocket a lot. They get way better. So I think Lowry just playing it the same way he's been playing. He's been very in control of his game, very in control of the game as a whole, and really calming guys down. The same way that when Goran would come in that 2020 bubble run, where it was like, okay, things are kind of it's getting a little shaky. You put Kyle Lowry in, he makes a difference. He slows the game down and he gets everybody going. So I think Kyle Lowry is going to be huge. Could be for us, could be for them. Who knows? Remains to be seen. But I am saying he is going to be the X factor for this series.
No, I think that's definitely a potential. I mean, Kyle Lowry has honestly saved a lot of grace with Heat fans and myself, a guy who kind of held on to that half-court shot after LeBron left in that playoff series against the Raptors, I had a lot of contempt in my heart for him. But over the last 2 series against the Knicks and against the Bucks, he has made some of the most timely shots and some of the best decisions that I've seen out of Kyle Lowry in a Heat jersey. Like, these recent stretch of games have been the best that I've seen out of him, maybe outside of early January last year when he was carrying the team with no Jimmy and no Bam. But Kyle has been doing exactly what you want. He's been coming off the bench. He's settling things down. He's creating a seamless transition from when Jimmy and Bam are coming on and off the floor to allow things to work for everybody else and to maintain that offensive pressure. And even last game, that little up and under over Mitchell Robinson, where he was able to get it in and get that little key bucket when the game was that close and Scott Foster was doing everything to get the Knicks into the game. He was able to just get those shots when they were timely and get into it. So let's get into the prize picks, guys. I actually have a couple of them pulled up because there's a little bit of a couple interesting ones that actually have entire series picks right now. So where you can go, if you bet 1 to 4, I'm actually going to look at it. Where is it? NBA series. So you have new ones as well, where you have games 1 through 4 with Jimmy 113.5, 121.5 for Jason Tatum. Obviously, we're going to keep it for today. I looked at some ones already on the boards. 2 that I liked is we know that Bam likes to play better in the first half than he does in the second half. So I like the Bam over 4.5 points in the first quarter. And then for Gabe Vincent, I do think he's going to get shots up earlier in the game. I like that over 4.5 points for the first half. That one's obviously a little riskier. But like Gad said, that 3-point shooting is going to be the variance when it comes to this series. But let's get to the other players, guys. Gad, I'll start with you on this, man. Who do you want to take a look at on the board?
Give me Jimmy Butler. Give me Jimmy Butler. Listen, I understand Boston. The funny thing is, I think this is, objectively speaking, the easiest individual matchup that Jimmy's going to see. In terms of one-on-one defenders, yes, you can throw Marcus Smart at him, but he's not better than Drew Holiday. And I don't think they're going to double him and try to get the ball out of his hands as much as the Knicks did, because the Knicks made that a point. They really wanted to make somebody else beat them, in which the Heat were able to do so. Not super pretty, but that doesn't matter. I'll roll with Jimmy. Give me 27.5 points. I'll take the over. I think if anyone knows how to go into that arena and make a statement, 5 days off, he's probably feeling healthy. Listen, last time he was there, he had 47, 9, and 8 in an elimination game. I'm not going to be doubting Jimmy Butler. I, in fact, will be betting on Jimmy Butler. So give me that play, 27.5 points. I wouldn't be shocked if he was at 20 at halftime. I wouldn't be shocked if he was at 6 going into the fourth and still hit that number. So I'm rolling to Jimmy Butler.
Love to hear that, man. Marco, how you feeling? What else do you want to take a look at? I think he might be disappeared. Gad, who else do you want to take a look at, brother?
Let's go with Strus. Let's check a Strus line real quick.
So they have him at 11.5 points, 2.5 3-point shots made. I do like the over on that, honestly. 4.5 field goals made. There's a couple of really nice props here for Max Strus. Honestly, he's the primary guy that's been shooting from deep for us. He's going to get the volume up. I'm going to take over on those 2.5 3-point shots made. I do think Max Strus clears that. And something that I can't remember who posted it online, or it might have been a reporter talking about the confidence that Jimmy instills in all these players just by being as confident as he is, right? Because he is as confident as he is, we can have 2 games back to back where you're down 15 and 16 and come back and get the win against Milwaukee, right? That's definitely something well. And then Andres Gonzalez with a good point saying Bam got to have 5 dunks and 5 blocks in the paint. 55 points made minimum at half. Caleb's got to show up. Everybody else got to show up. I do like the 5 dunks and 5 blocks. 5 blocks is obviously a lot harder because of just positionally how things work. You don't want to necessarily be trailing and leaving your defender in the help defender position all that time. But the 5 dunks, I want to see that aggression. It's something that we know is that Bam loves to be aggressive against Boston. Like, there's something about the Boston matchup that he feels like he can take advantage of. And I don't want to see Al Horford slow him down. Al Horford is a phenomenal center. He had a great run. He should not be able to stop Bam Adebayo. And I want Bam to also put the end of the Robert Williams discussion too. I want him to shut up all those Celtics fans with that. Marco, who do you want to take a look at as well?
I was gonna say Kyle Lowry because I posted the stat like 3+ days rest. The man goes crazy. He goes back to Raptors. Kyle Lowry. I think
Well,
if his points are at least 11, which was the last 10 and a half.
fair enough, yeah.
I'm going over definitely. Whenever he has 2 or 3+ days of rest, he has been phenomenal. The first play-in game when they had I think a whole week, and then the first round game against Milwaukee, and then the next series against the Knicks. I mean, Kyle Lowry with 2+ days rest, that he really rests that $1,000 behind, and he just goes out there and balls out every time.
Now, guys, if you want to maximize your money, you see it across the bottom of the screen. Use that promo code 5, spell it out FIVE, match your initial deposit up to $100. And you see here with the flex play, we have 5 picks right here. Even if we hit, let's say 3 out of the 5, you still save some of your money. And if you just get one of them wrong, you still double your money. So that way, you guys are going to win regardless. So you guys make sure you save that much money, keep as much money. You can always keep gambling for next time. So appreciate you guys joining us for the prize picks. We'll get into predictions now. Guys, let's get into it. Marco, I'll let you kick off the show. Gad, I'll let you kick off predictions. And Marco, you'll close this out. Gad, give us your prediction and give us a key to tonight's game.
So I'll start with a key to tonight's game. And this kind of for the rest of the series, honestly. I'm so intrigued to see how Spo handles Kevin Love's minutes and how he's able to match the 2 big lineups and whatever, because one of the things last year that was a really big problem was the fact that PJ Tucker, essentially great defender, super versatile, helped them a lot in that series. He kind of started to dwindle down as that series came to a close, and offensively, he just gave you next to nothing. Kevin Love, for as bad as he shot last series, is still going to be respected by the other team. He's still going to be respected by the Celtics as a threat. He can pass the ball. He can still contribute on the boards. Defensively, I do worry about the Celtics putting him in action. He could get absolutely played off the floor instantaneously, and he could also end up being like a 20-minute per game guy that can make a big difference for the Heat. So I'm really intrigued to see how Kevin Love's minutes shake out. Will he start? What's the balance between him, Caleb, and maybe even Haywood going to look like? All of that stuff really, really intrigues me. That is one of the kind of like chess piece moves that I'm excited to see from Spo and Missoula and whatnot. Predictions for tonight. Listen, call me crazy. I'm going to the Heat win. I understand the 8-point underdogs, whatever. Take the plus money. Take Heat money line. I don't care. Do whatever you want with your money. This is not betting advice. But if there's ever been a game for the Heat to take, they haven't lost a game 1. They started both of them on the road this year. They are off 5 days rest. Kyle Lowry turns into prime Andre Miller when he's on 5 days rest. I mean, you have Jimmy Butler, who's Michael Jordan's son. Bam is looking way healthier and way more ready to contribute than I think he has in any of the deep playoff runs we've seen recently. And the Heat are playing like a confident bunch. Obviously, the Celtics are really, really good. They will come out with a punch. They will have a run where they are looking like world beaters. And they probably score 15 points in less than 3 minutes, whatever it may be. I don't really care. I think the Heat have a mental edge and they have a preparedness to them that is going to end up showing up today. I think the Heat take this one. And then after this game is when I'll say, like, damn, this series is going to be really, really good. I still think we're headed for a long series. I think the Heat get game 1, and then we'll go from there.
Marco.
That was straight fire. Especially the Andre Miller shout out. I love him. Best lob thrower of all time next to D Wade. I'm gonna go a little curveball here. I'm gonna say the Celtics win tonight, but that's the only game they get win tonight. Heat in 5, 4 straight dubs. I'm saying that right now because I don't know when's the next time I'll be on a pregame because I'm gonna be working so much this coming weeks. But honestly, I feel what Gad's saying though, because I feel like Miami, they're probably looking tonight as the one they need to get on the road to kind of kick this off. Last year they won game 1, but it was at home. When you first set the tone with a game 1 win on the road, you kind of you feel like this is your year. And if Miami does the thing, shout out to Nikias, if they do, I don't know how this team isn't, primed for a championship because which is kind of crazy to think about. This team was dead in the water. They were 8 minutes away from, being the Toronto Raptors yesterday, looking at the lottery. So I think tonight it'll be a tough one. I feel like there's going to be a lot of, Spoelstra throwing out a lot of players, trying to see what sticks to the wall, trying to see if Duncan Robinson's going to have a place for this whole series at all. But yeah, I can't wait for tonight. Honestly, this is the most excited I've been for a Heat playoff game since 2020. What a crazy year it's been. And, hopefully it keeps going. But if it does, making it this far has been, awesome. And next year, hopefully, they do it again.
Yeah, like you said, the best part about this playoff run is how this team has been able to turn around maybe the perspective of other people and other players that potentially are looking out for their team, right? So now Miami, even being one of their worst seasons, is coming in, making the Eastern Conference Finals, making themselves a destination, and players like Kyle Lowry are raising their value again, right? Just putting themselves back into actually where they're playing into where their contract maybe not isn't worth, but they're able to stay on the floor. So as far as tonight's game, I have a hard time picking Miami. The thing is, I'm curious to see how they guard Jason Tatum. That's the main thing, right? If he goes off, he goes off, and it's pretty unstoppable to stop him. Like you could put Jimmy Butler on him come fourth quarter, but that's not something you want to do throughout a game one for most of the game. So it's all dependent on me on how Jason Tatum comes out. I want to see, like what Marco said, how Coach Spo can make him uncomfortable, because I feel like a lot of teams just allow him to get to his spots. We're going to have to make sure that we just make it hard to get to his spots. I'm curious to see where the zone goes, but I'm taking Boston with tonight. But like you said, I do think Miami gets game two coming into this series. But make sure you guys drop why I'm an idiot for picking Boston tonight. And make sure you guys praise God for picking Miami. If you guys have any other predictions, make sure you guys drop it in the comments. Like the video. Make sure you guys subscribe to the 5 Reasons Sports Network and follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all that good stuff. Follow our boys on Twitter as well. Marco, if you can't join us again, we appreciate you showing off the beautiful Heat jersey and those beautiful media deltoids as well.
The Carlos Arroyo on. That's crazy. Respect.
But Viva Puerto Rico.
Yes.
Shout out Bad Bunny. But let's go. Let's go Heat, guys. Appreciate you all joining us, and join us next time after the show.